What is up guys, it's Solheim here, back with another Wrath of the Lich King Classic video. So based on popular demand, I've sat down and gathered some thoughts on the best class and profession combos for Wrath Classic, basically talking about what I think are the best professions for each class ranked purely from a gold making perspective. Keep in mind that this will all be my own personal opinions, and which professions are best suited for you are 100% based on your desired playstyle. As a quick example of this, if you want to actively farm gold, herbalism, mining and skinning are great choices. But if you want to make gold by buying materials and crafting items for then to sell them for a profit, inscription, alchemy and jewel crafting are great choices. And if you want to just log in and do a daily craft and make some daily gold, alchemists can transmute items on a 20-hour cooldown and will make profit on these transmutes. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's discuss some classes and profession combinations. Let's start with the Paladin, which is going to be my main gold making class in Wrath of the Lich King Classic, and therefore I have put quite some thought into this, and I have come up with, I think, is the best solution put into two different stages. So in phase 1 and phase 2, maybe even phase 3, I'm planning to have herbalism and engineering on my Paladin, and the reason for this is that I want to use my Paladin as a hybrid farming character, both farming mobs in the open world but also flying around looking for objects. These two professions are the perfect combination for both of this, because herbalism allows you to fly around and look for herbs, but you can also farm specific lashers for eternal life throughout Northrend. You can also use engineering to fly around and hunt for gas clouds, plus by farming for specific eternals, you can obtain even more eternals simply by having engineering and sucking nearby gas clouds. As a quick example of this, I ran a 1-hour test farming eternal fires in Winter Grasp, and roughly 40% of my eternal fires that session came from sucking gas clouds. Alternatively, if you don't want to be a hybrid gold farmer like me, you can also go for herbalism and mining, in which case you kind of limit yourself to flying around and looking for gatherables, but personally, I like having the ability to do various different gold farms. In phase 4, maybe even phase 5, but definitely like some late Wrath Classic, I will swap at least herbalism out for skinning, so I can start doing the Oculus skinning farming. That way I can do some really decent gold, and it's instant farming as well, meaning that I don't have to worry about competition. Also, the better gear you have, the more effectively you can farm this. I will also either keep engineering or switch it out for enchanting, whatever helps me make the most gold, but basically my main plan for phase 4 onwards is farming instanced content, so I'm looking at doing the Oculus with skinning, as well as maybe old TBC dungeons for raw gold. While we are at it, let's talk about the Death Knight, and it's basically the same for me here as well. Death Knights can use their movement speed bonus, which makes them insane for farming, and this is specifically useful for professions such as mining and engineering, where you will have to dismount to interact and gather the object. So while Druids have a distinct advantage for herbalism, anyone with a movement speed increase have an advantage for mining and engineering, but having herbalism over mining is great if you want to be flexible enough to farm gold in different ways. Just like Paladins, Death Knight can also farm instance content later down the line, once they obtain some better gear, so you could also switch professions around to skinning and enchanting, or keep engineering, just like the Paladin. One more great thing about Death Knight is that they start at level 55, and Wrath crafting professions can be learned at maximum rank at level 65, so they are great profession alts to use for crafting professions as well. Before we move any further into the video, I also want to shout out my Wrath Classic Gold Guide, where I dive even deeper into both classes and professions for gold farming and gold making in Wrath of the Lich King. So if you're looking for even more information, I definitely recommend checking out that guide through the link down below in the video description, and right now you can also get it for 50% off by using the code Solheim. So mages then. Herbalism and skinning. Mages excel at AoE farming, specifically in the open world now that mage boosting is getting nerfed, and they are looking to add Season of Mastery changes, which makes it very difficult for mages to solo farm inside dungeons. In the open world, having herbalism and skinning will simply help you make more gold, as those are the two professions that allow you to get more loot from the mobs in the open world. If you're farming lashers somewhere in Northrend, you can gather them with herbalism to obtain even more crystallized life, and also additional herbs, and if you are killing beasts you can skin them with skinning for leather and arctic fur. But what about druids? Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Herbalism and mining. Is there any better combination for a druid out there? I feel like this is the go-to combination for every druid. Their flight form simply makes them so good for flying around and farming things. They can gather herbs in their flight form, and by using their flight form, they can also access many objects that other people will struggle with. They can also use Root and Cyclone to CC mobs while gathering, for then to sprint away and instantly popping flight form when out of combat. Later down the line, boomkins are pretty insane for open world farming as well, at which point you could make an argument for switching out both professions for engineering and skinning, for leather farms and gas clouds while farming Eternals, but honestly, there's a lot of other classes that are also very good at that, and I'm definitely sticking to herbalism and mining on my druid, that is for sure. For all of the other classes when it comes to gold farming specifically, I recommend farming professions that are compatible with mob farming, which would for example be engineering once again for gas clouds, herbalism for lashers, and skinning for leather farming, so any of those three and you should be good. Alternatively, there are a couple of good locations out there with humanoids, and having tailoring will give you additional cloth from those humanoids, but I really don't expect frostweave cloth to be worth that much for tailoring, to be more worth it than engineering, skinning, or herbalism. There is one more argument to be made for having engineering if you're looking to do AoE farming, because of the nitro boot, which will help you out in dangerous scenarios, plus allows you to pull a lot of mobs and kite them around, and also the bombs from engineering will give you additional AoE damage. What I will say to end this video is that which professions you go for don't rely too much on which class you play, but rather your desired playstyle. For example, as a rogue you can easily have herbalism and mining, and probably farm at almost the same efficiency as a druid or a paladin. The difference is probably around 1 to 2% in total, and as a rogue you can also have both engineering and skinning, and go for gas cloud farming, eternal farming, and leather farming. As for crafting professions, I would say class doesn't really matter too much. Alchemy, inscription, and jewel crafting can be picked up and used at full efficiency, regardless of your class, and blacksmithing and leatherworking brings with them some benefits such as fur linings from leatherworking, or extra sockets from blacksmithing, but none of those really matter too much for gold making, so once again, any class can use them for crafting and gold making purposes. You might want to consider having alchemy on alts that you don't intend to play a lot, just for that additional passive gold from transmutes, which will really come in handy, and I would also recommend picking up cooking on your main for that daily quest. If you have a jewel crafter, you can also make some really decent gold with the jewel crafting daily quest, and using those tokens on Dragon's Eyes. So one alternative here could be to have a character with both cooking and jewel crafting, just to maximize your gold from daily quests. If there is one thing to take away from this video, it is that unless you are really trying to min-max to the maximum, the class and profession combos don't really matter too much for gold making, but for raiding they could. Play what you want with the professions that you want to have. That being said, for hybrid gold farming, like flying around looking for objects, or gatherables, and also farming mobs, herbalism and engineering is amazing, and for purely flying around and looking for objects, herbalism and mining is amazing, since the engineering gas cloud locations will most likely be very camped by people farming while waiting for gas clouds, and if you're planning to farm a lot of humanoids, having tailoring will give you additional cloth. That is pretty much it though. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more Wrath videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.